Is a C70 rig video still relevant in 2026? Sit down, strap in, and hold on. We're going to find out. So here's the rig, and I'll go through basically a list of all of the components that I have on the rig. Just starting up at the front here, I have a small rig mat box with the eyebrow on the front. This is just basically a clip-on style mat box, nice and lightweight. Then mounting the clip-on mat box, I have a set of small rig rings. I think this at one time came with a whole different size of rings, but I ended up having to buy an adapter to go from 82 millimeter down to 77 millimeter, which is the size of the Mikey Cine Primes. On the front end of the rig here, I have a Teradek Spark 4K transmitter unit and a Ninja 5 recorder. Both of those are attached to a small rig NATO rail style handle with the wooden insert onto that. Okay, and then that basically just clips to the top of the camera and can come off fairly quickly. On the back end of the camera, I'm powering with V-mount power, and I'm typically using VB99 Pro batteries from Small Rig. And the battery plate that I'm using is a SUP Photo battery plate. I've got actually a couple of these for the various rigs. This particular one, I've had maybe 5-6 years. But it has various different plugs on the side of it for all of the different power requirements, plus a D-tap, plus on the other side here, we have USB connections for USB power. The only thing about the USB ports is they're not switched. The switch can come on or off, and this will always stay powered on. So it's one thing to remember that and that's powering this Teradek unit. So you can switch that off, but unless you switch the Teradek off manually, it could still be drawing power. That's the only downside to these battery plates, is that those USB are not switched. Everything else seems to be switched, as well as the D-tap, is not switched on that as well. So the D-tap is supplying power to a pair of Tilta Nucleus M motors. This is the original Nucleus M, the original generation of that. And then, of course, I've got the two motors on the rails. Now let's break this down just a little bit more here so we can see some of the stuff underneath. I'm just going to disconnect the camera, disconnect the battery on the back, and I'm going to pull that up and so that I can take the camera right off of that rig. Let's talk about what we have on the underside supporting the rig. So on the very bottom is a Manfrotto 501 P long. So that's about a 6-inch long Manfrotto tripod mount plate. That sits directly on top of, directly underneath. Directly on top of that is a small rig base plate that then allows me to connect my 15 millimeter rails. And then on top of all of that is a small rig quick release plate. And I bought a couple of these, and we'll see why in a little bit further on down the road. But I have a matching quick release plate on another setup, so that if I take the camera off to go onto that other setup, I can go straight from one to the other. So set that aside for a moment, and we'll look at some of the components on the camera itself. So starting on top here is the small rig top plate for the Canon C70. And I had a little bit of trouble with this at first, that it was just a little bit, just a tiny little bit of wiggle in the top plate. So I just added a thin sheet of cork material underneath of that. And then when I clamped it down, this thing is super tight and it doesn't go anywhere now. Okay, so that's the small rig top plate for the C70. A short, like about an inch and a half long NATO rail that's mounted into that top of that cheese plate. And then there's the new tentacle sink cage for holding the tentacles in place. That just sits right on the very top and then screws in to put a little bit of pressure on that so that the tentacle is nice and firmly held in place. And then a BNC cable feeding from the timecode port. And I just take that, give it a wrap once, and then plug directly into the tentacle for my timecode. As I've noted earlier, I've got a set of the Mikey mini primes, 10 millimeter, 25 millimeter, 35, 50, 65, and an 85. The set that I have for that. And then on the bottom of the rig, it's the small rig base plate for the Canon C70 that gets you the two side-by-side connection points from the C70 into something that's fore and aft on that. And that is basically just it's the companion quick connect. It's an Arca Swiss style um, uh, plate that goes on the bottom of the camera that fits into the quick release on the rig itself. Okay, so put things back together here. That just fits in and then locks down like that. And then can plug my power and my HDMI back in. Can't see it from this side. Just like that. My handle will go then back on top here. Lock that down. Power clip ring here on the front. And the mat box back on. Okay, so let's power everything up on the rig here. So power on the base plate. Power on the camera, Ninja 5, Teradek, and power on the motors for the follow focus and the iris. So they're just going to auto calibrate. Takes a couple of seconds. Okay. And for controlling that, basically just have a little focus pulling station that I've got. There will be a separate video that I do in terms of all the components that are on this, but I can, of course, control the zoom and the iris off of the remote follow focus. Lock that back down for a moment. Let's put our camera on the sticks and lock that in just like that. Okay. So you can see using the remote follow focus that somebody can basically be pulling focus and controlling iris while somebody is operating the camera. And then if we're in the mode where you don't have a dedicated focus puller, the Nucleus M kit comes with hand controllers. It comes with a set of two. If you get the kit that has the hand controllers, it'll come with a set of two. And these can be programmed for your focus. So if I turn this on, I'll just take this and put this in slave mode. So there, that's in slave mode. And now my hand units should control focus. And I've actually got the zoom button on this programmed for the iris because I only have the two motors. I wanted to make it so that I could control it all from one handle as opposed to doing focus, zoom with the thumb wheel, and then iris with the other hand. You can change around what each of these control in the functions. And this is where I like to have these little 15 millimeter 15 millimeter rail adapters. They usually come with a cold shoe mount, but they got 1/4 20 mounts. That allows me to put a magic arm on that. And now I can basically position this handle anywhere I want and be able to control my own zoom and iris if I'm doing a solo operator on the camera. So, okay. What I had before this setup, I just started doing this here very recently because it allows a lot more flexibility. Let's lock that down. It allows a lot more flexibility on positioning of this handle. You know, I can position basically almost anywhere that's comfortable for whatever configuration that I'm rolling with. And for whatever reason I need to move this around, it's just a lot easier to position and be exactly where you want it to be. Okay. And if I were a 3-motor setup, of course, I could have both of these handles on here. And technically speaking, I suppose I could get rid of this arm altogether and then just essentially control everything from these 2 handles. Now, this is a little bit, needs to be tightened up. And this needs to be tightened up. But let's undo that. But I can literally control the camera almost as if I was doing like following some sort of sporting event. I've got a couple of handles that I could basically follow the action while I'm watching on my monitor up top. Okay. Lock that back down. I'm going to just take these back off. But even so, let's just leave them on for a moment. Let's take the camera. There we go. You can see that they're not going to touch. They're not going to be in the way. They can quickly come on and off. And then just pull those off if they're not needed. So just like that. And then we're back to our base rig. Okay, so next piece that I was going to talk about is some of the choices and why I made those choices. Obviously, you can sort of see some of the benefits of how the rig is configured already. But let's talk about a few more key details around the setup. Okay, so for the main parts of the build, there was a couple of key things that I wanted to make sure. First being flexibility. I wanted to make sure that it was easy to change things around, easy to configure, easy to swap lenses, easy to see the monitor, easy for battery changes. Everything is all about trying to make this the easiest rig at all possible. So I rebuilt this or reconfigured this a little bit from my previous configuration. I used to have this 24-70 zoom lens on here, but now I've got a set of Mikey RF mini primes. And there's 6 different lenses I got in that set. And so, and the thing I like about that, of course, is the gears are always in the same spots on the Cine lenses. And it's really just a matter of swapping the lens out, putting another lens in, and then you're good to go. So we've got a matte box that, you know, they look cool, but really, you know, if you need it in order to cut down glare or anything else, or if you need it to put in any filters, you can do so. Now, I've got a Canon C70, so it's got ND filters built right into the camera. And so I'm not going to be putting any NDs in this, but any other type of mist filters or any other artistic style filters can go in the matte box and sit in front of the lens. Now, one of the problems that I do have with this rig is because these Mikey lenses are as small as they are, my focus and iris motors are very close to the camera body. So it makes it difficult to get at the SD cards on the side of the camera. So what I end up having to do is I need to take and actually unplug the motor connections, and then I can open up my SD card slots and take my cards in and out. And then I have to plug these back in. That's really, you know, as far as getting this, you know, put together and having something that was a little problematic. That's one of the only things that really has ended up being problematic on the build. Okay. Now, I see a lot of camera rig videos where people put a battery plate because they want to use V-mount power. And of course, I want V-mount power. And I want to be able to just change out the battery only. So of course, I've got a battery plate on the back of this. Nothing of the rig has to be plugged in directly to the battery. So if it comes time for a battery swap, battery's off, new battery comes in, and you're good to go. Okay, so I didn't want to have to be unplugging things from the battery all the time in order to do a battery swap. I want it to be as quick as old battery out, new battery in, and then go. The other big thing that I see a lot of rig videos where they put a battery plate on, but then it gets in the way of their tilt screen. They can't get their tilt screen out, so they take the battery plate off, they swing out that plate, versus this style one, which actually is on a hinge. So you can just roll that back, roll that out, and voila. Now, this is the one and only time that if I want to have this display out and sort of fold it back like that, the USBs do get in the way. So that is the one time that I do take it off the top of the battery, and I have no fingernails, so I can't peel that rubber up very easily. And then I will plug that into the V-mount battery. That's the one and only time I do this, is if I want to have that display out so that somebody that's on that side of the camera can see what's going on for settings or whatnot. Otherwise, most of the time, I'm probably just going to have that running off to the side or closed because I'm watching everything on the monitor. And in that case, we're just going to leave everything plugged into the USB right on the side. Okay. And then if I don't need the monitor, of course, I can just swing it away and then pull this back and put it back up in place. So that the ability to have that on a little swivel at the bottom, that pays off in its own weight in gold in terms of the flexibility and making access to the back end of the camera easier as it can be. Okay, now the next thing about the camera build that I wanted it to be very easy is I want to, of course, be able to take the camera out of the rig very, very quickly. So, we're going to go from fully rigged here. Let me just put the matte box back on. I have a scenario where I want to go from camera rig, which could or could not be maybe on the tripod, but I'm just going to stick it on the tripod for a second. But then I want to take it and I want to go gimbal mounted. So we just stick the gimbal off to the side there for the moment. Well, we're just going to very quickly, matte box comes off, ring comes off. We don't need that on there if we're going to be on the gimbal. And then I've got down here a little 15 millimeter rod to hot shoe adapter, but it's of course got all kinds of little 1/4 inch 20. And so I put a little piece of NATO rail on the bottom there. And the reason I did that is when I want to go take this top handle off, all of the wiring on my rig is all zip tied in place so that nothing sticks out of the way. Okay. Now, I don't want to have to just leave that sitting somewhere. So basically what I do is I just put it on that little piece of NATO rail and I can clamp that down, and then that handle's not going anywhere. And then of course, I can very easily just make sure that everything's unplugged from the camera, undo this quick release if I can see it. And the camera's going to come right off. And then I can put my cable back in place. The only reason I took that off is it tends to get caught up on the motors. And then, of course, we're going to come in and we're going to try and put this on this guy. Now, this has already been previously balanced. And I just basically put that in place, lock it in. And then all I really need to do is reconnect a few wires here. This guy's going to go into the middle, plug in my HDMI. Which one am I missing here? I'm missing this guy. Plug in this guy here. And then, sorry, that guy gets plugged in right there. And then I can basically release all my locks and turn my gimbal on. And we're ready to go on a gimbal. And that didn't take much more than a little over a minute. And if I was really trying, I could probably get the whole exercise done in less than a minute. I added these swing arm device here onto the gimbal so that if I want to hand hold, I can hand hold the gimbal with two hands like that. But the nice thing about this piece of kit, and it's getting harder to find these, they weren't available on Amazon in the US, but in Amazon in Canada, they were still had a few left in stock. But that just basically swings around backwards like that. And then that'll lock in place. And then you've got multiple ways of carrying the gimbal. And then last but not least, with the 1/4" 20 connection on the top of there, I'm just waiting for the quick releases to arrive in the mail. And then I will be able to take this and connect this to my Easy Rig, and it'll take all of the weight. And then basically I'm just using two hands on the gimbal. So that's the quick and dirty. Now I'm just going to put this back there and clamp that back down. And let's go the other way now. So I will turn off the gimbal. And then I will lock all the motors back in place. And then unplug that. Unplug these two. Disconnect the camera. Gimbal goes away. We come back over to here. And then that comes in. And just do a double check that my motors are still aligned. They are. I'm going to lock that down. Can't see it. There's my HDMI cable. I will take this and route it around there. That back in for the tentacle. And then I can take my top handle around, back onto the front, and lock that down. Just like so. And then I am ready to rock almost. I just need to put the power back into the back of the camera for the V-mount. And then we're good to go again. Okay. Oops. Almost forgot about the matte box, and I almost dropped it. Let's put that ring back on. Lock the matte box back in place. And that all sits right on that bottom. None of the other stuff in the front here is actually touching. You can see I can slide paper right in underneath of that. Nothing is getting in the way of that. So one thing that's not on the rig here right now is the little quick connect knob that's going to screw in there. As I said, those are in the mail. I'm just waiting to receive them so that I can then put that on to the quick release for the Easy Rig, and then be able to take this and support this on the Easy Rig with it all rigged out completely like that, or then quickly put it back on the sticks. That's the flexibility of the rig that I really like. It makes it very, very quick, quick lens changes, quick changes to go from, this rig to a gimbal rig to an Easy Rig, all in very short order, so that it's not me as camera on the day holding up the production, de-rigging and re-rigging for the next shot. So I hope that gives you guys some ideas for a camera rig that if you're thinking about building, you've seen a few ideas here that you like and might incorporate into your own rigs. And if you've made it this far in the video, of course, thanks for watching. And if you're going to go outside, don't make a big noise. Make good sound and make good video. See you in the next one.